I guess inquiring minds want to know what I would do to fix the Jaguars' offensive line. The one that I've been telling y'all for 2 years was broken, and most people didn't want to listen. So listen now. I'll explain it again in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, everybody? Thanks for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen. A quick reminder, we're free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. That is Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you go there, hit the like button, subscribe, and then hit that bell so you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And if you listen to podcasts in your car or at work, wherever you happen to do that, make sure you tap in every single day to make sure you don't miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use the code, all lowercase, lockedonnfl, for a first deposit match up to $100. And thank you to the everydayers for joining us. And if you're not one, you can be an everydayer. All you got to do is just listen every day. All right, so here we go. I had to clear my throat like DJ Cool to make sure I don't get all riled up here. All right. So we're shopping for the Jacksonville Jaguars in the offseason. Okay. We're going to put Trent Baalke a little bit on the back burner. We're also going to put a little bit on the back burner. We're going to put Ryan Nielsen, the new defensive coordinator, and all of that stuff. We're going to put all of that stuff on the back burner. Since so many of my listeners, which I appreciate every single one, and even those that don't listen, that comment on social media, they are very myopic, and what that means, they are laser focused on what's right in front of them. And what's right in front of them is this. They feel like the Jacksonville Jaguars need protection for Trevor Lawrence. Newsflash, so do I. In fact, so much, that that's all I've talked about for the last 2 years. I might have even lost a couple of friends, guys that I consider friends, who do this football stuff with me, and we go back and forth. I might have even lost a couple of them because while they thought the line was quote unquote fine, I said it wasn't. All right. I did a podcast about 9-10 months ago. I said Phil Rauscher has his people. I think they finally got some good parts on this line. See, that's me giving them the benefit of the doubt. All right. It's me giving them the benefit of the doubt until they prove it wrong. Because just because I didn't think it was well doesn't mean I was going to sit here and think or act like I didn't want it to be good so I could prove myself right. No, I said, okay, they got all of their people. They've had enough time. They've had a couple of years. They like the players they have. Let's see what they can do and let's see what they got. That's all it was. So when it does start to go bad, I'm like, nah, it still ain't it. It's not still. So that's not waffling. What that is you thinking one thing, then you give them the benefit of the doubt and say, show me. And then when they show you, you have to be able to be man enough to come and point out exactly what it is, whether you're right or wrong. Okay. So to give you an idea of where we are, I've always said you can't do mock drafts without doing a hypothetical free agency first, right? The difference between those two is obvious, but I have to explain it to some people because I guess some people don't realize it. In free agency, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed on availability. And even if a guy does talk to you, he just might not choose you. Players are at different points in their careers. Money means something to all of them, but sometimes the money becomes, relative if there's something else that they're chasing too, or where they are in their career, they want to be somewhere else. And if they're older, and if they have families, they start to think about the school system, whether they're going to move their kids here, how long their contract is going to be, all types of things. For instance, everyone thought Calais Campbell was just going to walk right back into Jacksonville last year when he became a free agent. He came here and left with a frown on his face from what I heard because they offered him an offer that was ridiculous. And the way that they sounded didn't sound as if they were ready to win. He goes to Atlanta. He chooses Atlanta. Well, they ain't win nothing either. But to him, it sounded better. And I'm sure he probably met with Ryan Nielsen, right? The Jaguars' new defensive coordinator. And something made him feel more comfortable signing with them than Jacksonville. So it's not as if you're going to get everyone in free agency, but you can try. It is very hard to do a draft and assess needs when you don't even have an idea of what the team has done in free agency, because it's team building one-on-one. If you look at this based on the way high school recruiting is now, it's not apples to apples. I'm not saying that. The draft for a lot of teams in that first round, sure, they're going to fill a need, because hypothetically that guy's supposed to be more ready to contribute. And the reason why he's a higher rated prospect is because he's giving you less of an idea of what the guesswork is. You kind of have a feeling. It's the likelihood to be successful. So that's what a prospect is. What is more likely to happen because of certain things that you use as measurables and other things that you deem important, right, as a team. But for the most part, once you get beyond that, you know what you get? You start drafting your types. You start drafting guys based on their ability, their body of work, what you project them to be, their attitude, what they were asked to do versus what you're going to ask them to do, what kind of, just the human being. You are getting, I can't even think of the word, the correct word, and I think I have it, but I'm going to make sure that I have the definition, the definition. Did y'all hear me? The definition correctly first. You know, I really want to make sure that I have it down, because I want to make sure that I say this correctly. But he is a guy that is, it's the type of player that you know you want to your core, right? The kind of guy that personifies who you are. The Detroit Lions are the perfect example, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out the word to say it, but Dan Campbell said it best. Basically, to paraphrase him, they hand chose all of those guys, what type of people they wanted. The 49ers have come out and said that they do it. So you got to get all of that right. You have to be able to, what do you lead with? Do you value the type more than what you've seen? Are you right about whether or not this player is going to be good? All of these things matter. All of those things matter when it comes. That's why when folks say, well, it's just a guessing game. It is not a guessing game. It's just very hard to be right about it. If anybody thinks that these guys are just guessing, you're wrong. They're not. They have 40, 50 people putting eyes and creating boards. And I'm critical of them. I've been critical of Trent Baalke. It's almost as if, what do you lead with? What is the most important thing for you? And then the ability to communicate that and understand what your coaches want and how those coaches are going to be interacting with those players when you're not around. Because what happens is somebody else takes over. Once you get them into the team, somebody else takes over. You're not the one sitting there motivating them and talking to them every day. A GM shouldn't even really talk to a player. He just talk to his agent, if you ask me. It is the coach's responsibility to talk to players all the time. So now that we've gotten that established, I'm appalled that people think that you can use a first-round pick on anything else other than your most glaring need and think that that means that you didn't address certain things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm going to take you on a field trip and hold your hand if that's what we need to do. And for those that already know this, you're just along for the ride. So sip your cocktail or something. But I'm going to show you exactly how you can do this. I'm going to do it two ways. I'm going to do it the way you do draft an offensive lineman in the first round, and then I'm going to do it where you don't. So you understand that while that is still priority number one, in my opinion, it doesn't mean it's what you have to do first. If you're going into a grocery store to get some ribs, and then your wife texts you and say, get this too. Okay. Are you just going to beeline to the ribs when you get there? Or when you walk in the store, if one of those items that she says you need is sitting right there, can you just grab that too while you're on the way? Or you're going to beeline to the ribs and then you turn around and come back and all of those things are gone. I want to talk about it. And I want to get the Jaguars some offensive linemen. I'm going to get them some help, and I'm going to still get them some playmakers too. Walking and chewing bubble gum at the same time is something that we all should have learned a long time ago. If you didn't, you're going to learn today here on Locked On Jaguars, and I'm going to tell you in a minute exactly what I'm talking about. First, I have to let you know about today's sponsor, which is Prize Picks, man. That's the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. I did pretty well on Prize Picks this year. One of the reasons is because I'm not going against other people. That's right. It's just you and the system, you and the numbers. You have to pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Now, with basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or other leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Want to play alongside some of the Prize Picks favorites? Players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can now find them in community plays on Prize Picks. So here's what you do. You make sure you go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOn and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. It's Prize Picks, man. You better get on it. All right, rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars with your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen. All right, so check this out. Free agency. I have already been on record, and I'm going to write this as I'm going along. Free agency. I'm going to go and I'm going to try to get Robert Hunt, right guard from Miami. It's going to cost you a little bit. You can offset some of that, though, because you're going to release Brandon Scherff, okay? Just in case y'all don't know who Robert Hunt is, Robert Hunt, 6'6", 335 pounds, and he is a manimal. That's right. He handles, they run that zone blocking scheme, and he handles his business on the right side of that line. So right now, that would leave us with Luke Fortner at center, and I know y'all are ready for him to go. And going on the right side, it's going to be Robert Hunt. We got a hole at right tackle. The reason why we have a hole at right tackle is because I'm moving Anton Harrison to left tackle. That's where he played in college. Anton Harrison is also the best offensive lineman on this team, in my opinion, and I think he needs to play at left tackle. That also means that we let go of Cam Robinson. We try to trade him, but if we can't get a trade, we let go of Cam Robinson. Now, you say, why did you do that? Why don't you just keep Cam, add Robert Hunt, keep Anton on the right side? You can do that. You can do that all you want. There ain't no problem. Ain't no problem. We can leave him there. If that's what y'all want to do, we can leave him there, because now that means that's a hole that we don't have to get at some place else. I'm not re-signing Ezra Cleveland. I think he's going to want too much money. But I am going to sign Lloyd Cushenberry, the third, out of Denver. Okay? So there's your center. Really good center. One of the top. He's not one of the top 5 in the league, but I would assume that he's probably somewhere between 8 and 12. And I think that gives you a pretty good player. All right. You can also still draft one, maybe in the 4th round or so. But right now, so now what you have is left tackle Anton Harrison. You have center Lloyd Cushenberry III, and you have a right guard in Robert Hunt, right? I wouldn't touch it again. In my scenario where they don't pick a guy in the 1st round, that I gave the other day where I said I take Nick Wiggins or one of those man-to-man corners, I can't come back in the 2nd round, right? I can come back in the 2nd round, and I can go get a right tackle. I can go back to Oklahoma if I want to. You're not going to get the kid from Oregon State, but there is this kid Guyton who played along with Anton Harrison. He might be available. If he is not available, that's fine. Ain't no problem. You can then come back in the 2nd round and snatch a guard, somebody that can play left guard. I'm a big Cedric Van Pran fan out of Georgia, right? And this might be a little early for him, but if you got to move around a little bit, move around. He can play left guard and he can play center. I think Connor Barton is gone. There is There's a guard at TCU, and I'm gonna pull his name up for you real quick. He played a lot of left tackle, but he projects to be a guard. That's right, he projects to be a guard. There's some other guys too, guys like Christian Mahogany, who I think will be from Boston College. Christian Haynes is a little bit small for me with Trent. I try to match up traits. Christian Haynes is at 6'2", 313. I think he's going to be a real good player. But then when you think about Trent Baalke, you try to match up guys to who you think Baalke's going to pick. I know everybody wants Cooper Beebe, right? And what happens is with guys like this, they start showing up. I think he's a good player, but he starts showing up on every single mock draft, whether it be a third or a fourth round pick. He starts showing up in everybody's mock drafts, right? There'll be other good players like Javion Cohen, who I believe can be a really, really good player out of Miami. So I'm going to find this kid from TCU. He's a tackle. I want to make sure I get his name right. But yeah, that's it, man. You know, there's a way to go about doing this without having to draft a guy in the first round. So you get your corner or your wide receiver, depending on who falls to you, in the draft, and you're still sitting here looking at a brand new line. Don't forget about Cooper Hodges also. Cooper Hodges, but I don't blame you if you don't want to risk everything on a guy who was a rookie last year who got hurt. Okay, so Talihisi Fuaga is the kid from Oregon State who I don't think will be around. I took Amarius Mims in the draft where I do take an offensive lineman. Right there at the end of the first round, I take Amarius Mims. If you don't want to take Amarius Mims, if you don't want to move Anton Harrison, then you can go ahead and take Jordan Morgan, a real good offensive tackle out of Arizona, 6'6", 320. There's a lot of people that love Troy Fautanu. I'm not as huge a fan of him as some people are. Tyler Guyton is his name. Tyler Guyton is a big kid, 6'7", 327, out of Oklahoma. Look, they did a good job with Anton Harrison last year, so at least I'm going to give him the benefit of that. I'll say, okay, can you come back in the first or the second round, and can you draft someone who is Brandon Coleman is the kid I'm talking about out of TCU, and I think he's going to probably end up being a later pick in this draft. So he's a kid that I believe can play some guard. He's probably projected as a guy who can probably play a little bit of left guard because there was some questions about some of his ability. But there's a way you can address this, man, and it can be your biggest need, but it just not be what you grab first. The reason why you have to look at it this way also is because every team in the league is going to be, whether they need offensive linemen or not, like right now, they're always going to draft these young offensive linemen. Every team in the league won't be using premium resources on cover corners if they already have one, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But with you holding 8 to 9 people, dressing 8 to 9 people every single week, with guys having various age groups and age differences, most teams will spare no expense to protect their quarterback. So the thing is if you're one of the only teams that absolutely needs these players up front, a good player is going to fall to you because, like, for instance, you're not in the market for a quarterback. You're not in the market probably for a linebacker if you're Jacksonville. They're not going to be in the market for a tight end because they keep using resources on them. So what you do is you go through the list and you check those guys off. You still evaluate them, but you check them off in terms of how many of those guys are sitting at you in front of 17. You take them off. So if there's 4 of them, that means you're really sitting at number 13. And when you're there, you have to get the 13th best player in the draft, unless it's at a redundant position like quarterback or running back. You have to do it. That's what the draft is. I almost look at it like this. If you compare it to college football, the transfer portal, you're going out and getting immediate help. That's free agency. The draft, what do they do in high school recruiting? You draft the kind of kids that fit into your program that you can draft and develop, other than the guys in the first round. The guys in the first round, you usually expect them to be able to come in and play. And then a lot of times some in the second round. But that's the reason why I think it's ridiculous that people think you can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. I just named a whole bunch of things that they can do. Sign 2 guys in free agency and then draft one early and then come back in like the 4th round and get one. You can have 4 offensive linemen between free agency and day 2 of the draft that can come in and help you right away. And then there's the secondary market of free agency where there's going to be some veterans looking for a job. And if you need to plug somebody in, protecting Trevor is my number 1 priority. It absolutely is. I'll tell you, I'm going to answer the question for you if the Jags can do both. Yeah, but I'm going to explain exactly how they can do it, address all of their needs, and satisfy that crowd that only sees what's in front of them. It's like blinkers on a Kentucky Derby. You only see what's in front of you because you can't think when you're distracted, okay? So that's where we're going here. I'm going to let you know how the Jags can absolutely do both to bolster up their team and talk about some of the other needs they have on this team as well. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, man, I'm going to tell you exactly how. I'm going to explain to you exactly how the Jaguars can do this in free agency, and do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Okay, here we go. Got to tell you about eBay Motors, man. That's right. I'm going to tell you something. Millions of parts for your cars. Passion, driving, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. Listen, with over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bringing home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, man, running along here. Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. And we always thank you for making us your first listen. Quick recap: finding Trevor a bodyguard, a few bodyguards, and why it seems like the fan base is just a little bit twisted when it comes to what you have to do first, based on or the first thing you do doesn't have to be your biggest priority. No, doesn't have to be. As long as you find a way to address your biggest priority, it doesn't mean it has to be the first thing you have to do, because the first thing that you have to do might present itself. Your biggest priority might not be the first thing that presents itself, which means on the first day of free agency, if you're trying to get these guys, they say, okay, we're going to look around. We'll come see you next week. What if there's like a wide receiver, or what if there's something else that you need, a defensive tackle who's willing to come see you day 1? And you're able to get that done day 1. But with the offensive lineman, they want to look around. So are we to assume that the team is not prioritizing and not numerically putting in order who they should take and who they shouldn't? Nah, that's not the way it works. It's absolutely not the way it works. So can they do both? Absolutely. Can they fix everything in one off season? No, no one ever fixes everything in one. But typically, everything that appears to be broken isn't broken. It's just that sometimes it just takes one thing to make all of it look bad. I said a long time ago, it takes people a long time to make offensive line. It could take one guy to make the whole line look bad, and then it takes people a long time to identify why does the whole line look bad when only one guy looks bad. So the funny thing about this is when I was trying to add offensive linemen last year, I'm wondering now, I'm not going to assume that it's the same people, but when I was trying to add offensive linemen last year, and I told y'all Walker Little wasn't good enough for you to do or not do anything, not saying he's bad, but we have to get out of this, well, he's adequate, well, he's okay, but we can get by with him. The teams that are winning championships aren't trying to get by with anybody. They're trying to find guys that they know who can get the job done. The guys that they think they can get by with, they got them in the lab trying to get them better. Or they're tricking y'all to thinking that they're all good and then they're trading them to you. That's what they're doing. They want everybody. No, everybody's not going to be a Pro Bowler. No, that's not what it is. And it's not required. You know, if you go talk to a bunch of NFL players and ask them who can play and who can't, they'll tell you a lot of guys can play who not all pro. They'll tell you a lot of guys who are dogs that aren't household names. Look in basketball. They'll do the same thing. You see guys that are Hall of Famers every day telling you about guys that they played with that were real good players that they respected, that the average fan might not even know who they are. So we got to get out of this fan way of thinking that, well, you think everybody in the locker room is going to be good. There's everybody in that locker room is going to have some value to that team. Hell yeah, I think that. Hell yeah, I think that there are a lot of people over the years. Darryl Smith is one of them. Darryl Smith ain't lining up on nobody's Hall of Fame list. Darryl Smith, I don't know if he was ever a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro. Ask anybody. You go ask Fred Taylor. You go ask Marcus Stroud. You ask Jimmy Smith about Buck. That's his nickname. And they'll tell you, dog. They'll tell you the same thing about Gary Walker, dog. They'll do that. So everybody doesn't have to be an All-Pro, but everybody has to be able to play and be a guy that people in that locker room respect. If a defensive tackle is there, if Chris Jones is willing to come to Jacksonville on day one of free agency, it is a no-brainer. You take Chris Jones. Then you work out an agreement to go visit Robert Hunt and Lloyd Cushenberry. That's the way this works, y'all. It doesn't come. Your priority need doesn't walk through your door in order. They're going to be sitting there waiting on you. You got a defensive coordinator that wants to play man-to-man, and you ain't got not one man-to-man cornerback on that roster that's under contract beyond 2024. You know what you need? You need man-to-man corners. That's what you need to do. You need to go out and get guys that can play this defense that this guy coaches, because if not, you're going to be right back here with your eyes all puffy from crying again and yelling and screaming and putting clown emojis up all over again if you don't fix it. So, yeah, they can draft a wide receiver in the first round. They can keep Cam Robinson. They can sign Robert Hunt or another guard, Lloyd Cushenberry. And now they have 4 spots on their offensive line fixed. And you either keep working with Walker Little, you pray and hope Cooper Hodges is right, or you find another one in the 4th round or in the second wave of free agency that'll come after the draft, and you get a veteran and you stick him right at left guard. That's it. You've addressed it. But does that still mean that if Keon Coleman is sitting there at 17 and you're at 17, you shouldn't take him? Does it mean if Nate Wiggins or Kool-Aid McKinstry is sitting there at 17 that you don't take him? No, it doesn't mean that. Yeah, they can address more than one thing at once. And then they can come right back in the second round and look and find the biggest, baddest defensive lineman, versatile defensive guy to add to their front, and they can take him too. Or they can take a backup edge guy, whoever the board says is there based on their evaluation. So then when I say that, I'm getting this. Well, you got to think who's doing the drafting, Trent Baalke. That's a whole different argument than what they have to do, whether it's Trent Baalke, whether it's Jimmy Johnson or Bill Walsh, the late, great Bill Walsh. I don't care who it is drafting. You're going to follow these rules. Now, it doesn't mean that Baalke's going to get it right, but there is a way that you can do it all. If he ain't going to get it right, if you got the wrong GM, it's not just a crapshoot. It is not. That's not what this is. It seems like that to people that don't either do it for a living or people that don't know how to do it for a living. I tell you what, if Shad Khan ever has a GM and he tells him it's a crapshoot, then he needs to find somebody else. Whoever's over there needs to be absolutely sure that they can actually pick good players, because the teams that win, that's what they do. And that's who you got to play against. You don't have to play against fans. I heard Trent Baalke, somebody mentioned, I think somebody mentioned to me yesterday, I heard he has an intern that, somebody said he has an intern that listens to all the negative stuff and reports back. Who gives a damn? I don't care if he listens to this stuff, and he shouldn't even be wanting to listen to it. He should be having his head down, doing his job, and be convicted that he's going to find the right people. But to all of y'all that think that you somehow, by the time the draft comes, whenever it is, free agency will be most of it will be done. Are y'all sitting here telling me that the Jaguars or you, if you were in charge, you wouldn't have addressed free agency. You wouldn't have addressed the offensive line, the interior of the offensive line at all until you get in April or May when the draft comes. Oh, now we got to draft our savior in the first round. Doesn't work like that, man. And y'all need to quit. Have y'all know what you're doing too. You're trying to engage and just have people engaging with you. And a lot of the other people, you know what you're doing too? You're holding on to names that are familiar to you, and that's going to get you in trouble. And the other thing that's going to get you in trouble is always trying to be right. Any good thought somebody else has that gets traction, folks are going to want to go and disagree with it because they didn't come up with the thought first. In any event, make sure the thing that you do come up with first is checking out Locked On Sports Today on Locked On Sports Today's 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, because Locked On Sports Today is here, and it was launched with the idea of covering the top sports stories of the day and local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We'll see you guys tomorrow, man, as we continue to discuss more comings and goings of the Jaguars. Trent Baalke will talk on Thursday, and of course, we'll probably try to record after that press conference so that we can get that out to you fresh off the press. Until then, you guys take care of each other, and I'll see you next time.